When we were asked to find popular African American literature, we immediately thought of the award-winning author Christopher Paul Curtis and his critically acclaimed debut novel, The Watsons Go to Birmingham, in 1963. Known for being the first author to win both the Newbery and Coretta Scott King Award, Christopher Paul Curtis was born in the peak of the Civil Rights Movement in Flint, Michigan. It is his ability to write literature about regular families and how they are affected by historical events that attracted us to The Watsons Go to Birmingham. The Watsons Go to Birmingham is narrated by 10-year-old Kenny, a member of the Weird Watsons who live in the super-duper cold town of Flint, Michigan. Kenny and his two siblings, Byron and Joetta, go to Clark Elementary, where Byron, the family juvenile delinquent, rules. Life at Clark Elementary has its ups and downs for Kenny, where he is known for his unlikely intelligence and often called Poindexter in the halls. It isn't until Rufus, a funny-talking kid from Arkansas, moves to the town that Kenny makes his first friend. While it seems that Kenny's life is finally looking up, Byron's luck decreases. His habit for finding trouble finally draws the line when he conks his hair without permission, a big no-no in the Watson family. Against the wills of the children, Mama and Papa decide to send Byron to Birmingham, Alabama, Mama's hometown, to spend the summer with Grandma Sands. The family packs up and makes a long trek to Alabama, where they feel the warmer air will have an effect on Byron's bad attitude. After a few days in the sun, the family finally sees a change in Byron, especially when he saves Kenny from drowning in the whirlpool at Collier's Landing. The Watsons are thankful for Byron's change. However, it seems that their luck runs out when the town is shook by the bombing of their neighborhood church. Earlier that morning, Joetta is sent to Sunday school, and in a whirlwind of events, described by Kenny as a blur, the family is rushed to the church, fearful for their daughter's life. Kenny, the closest to Joetta, sees the events unfolding around him and can't believe his eyes. It isn't until they arrive home without Joetta that she is found, waiting for them on their back porch. However, Kenny is still shaken by the events that unfolded in Birmingham. It isn't until an act of brotherly love by Brother Byron that Kenny finally sees how blessed he is to have his family beside him, even if it still is in super-duper cold Flint, Michigan.
The book starts out with the Watson family in their home in Flint, Michigan. The family is braving the cold weather that the fall brings to Michigan cities. Flint is the largest city in Michigan and is located along the Flint River. In fact, the author of this book is from Flint, Michigan, which gives him the ability to relate to these fictional characters. Moving on to the story of the book. The family takes a trip to Birmingham, Alabama to visit a relative. Now this is new to the family as they have been living in Michigan and have never been to the South. In this story, Kenny, the narrator, describes the trip to Alabama as being about 2 million miles from Flint. Well, that's not actually the case. Along the drive, Dad warns his family that they can't just stop anywhere on the road because not all places serve African Americans. Even though racism and segregation was a national problem, there was a huge difference in how African Americans were treated in the South than in the North. And the Watsons were about to arrive in the middle of it all. Birmingham is the largest city in Alabama. It is known for its steel industry. Birmingham exists because of the Civil War. In April 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham from the Birmingham jail. On September 15, 1963, the famous bombing of the 16th Street Church occurred, which is mentioned in the book. These two historical events give leeway as to how Birmingham, Alabama was involved in the Civil Rights Movement. Throughout the book, the narrator notices how different people in the North and South talk. Kenny makes fun of his mother multiple times in the story because she's from Alabama and has a Southern accent. He also picks on the new kid at school, Rufus, who is from the South, for having a very, very thick Southern accent, different from his mother's. Also, Rufus likes to do Southern things during his free time, such as fishing and being outdoors, which is different than what Kenny and his friends usually do. After visiting Birmingham, Alabama, Kenny Watson realizes that different places around the U.S. are not all the same as his little world in Michigan.
The Watsons Goes to Birmingham takes place during the peak of the Civil Rights Movement.
In 1865, after the Civil War, the 13th Amendment gave African Americans their freedom. The abolition of slavery caused an outrage among Anglo-Saxons, and they refused to entertain the idea of African Americans having the same rights because they were inferior. This in turn caused the formation of the Jim Crow laws, which endorsed the idea of separate but equal facilities. The Jim Crow laws required for all public facilities to be segregated, from public transportation, water fountains, bathrooms, and to schooling. In the Watsons Goes to Birmingham, Mr. Watson talks about the colored-only bathrooms in Alabama and how African Americans were allowed to go to only those bathrooms. Just like in the novel, the Jim Crow laws stated that African Americans were legally obligated to use colored-only bathrooms and sit in designated locations in restaurants and buses. This occurred in 1890, and even 70 years later, these issues were still very relevant. This is similar to what Kenny witnessed in the novel. Although he lived in Flint, Michigan, he too went to a segregated all African American school. Since he was isolated from the general white population, the Watsons were not exposed to racism regularly. This all changed when they were started on their trip to Birmingham. It became evident that segregation was occurring in the South when Miss Watson mentions the specific places they were going to visit on the road trip, because a lot of the places down in the South refused to serve African Americans. In this video, you'll be able to see the Jim Crow laws implemented in the 1960s.
African Americans still struggle against a system known as Jim Crow. This legal segregation has been in force for decades, preventing black people from exercising their rights as citizens.
After slavery, what you got was a culture of slavery in Jim Crow laws. The emphasis on the fact that African Americans did not belong, that they would never become members of the political or moral community, that they'd never participate fully in the society as equal citizens, which is what freedom in the sense of democracy means.
The early 1960s were a swinging time to be alive. Ultra-glide record players, much like the one in the Watsons Brown Bomber, spun the sounds of artists like Ray Charles, The Supremes, and Nat King Cole. Families, including the Watsons, tuned their televisions to wholesome programs such as The Untouchables and Ozzie and Harriet. The eternally glamorous Audrey Hepburn romanced America on and off the red carpet. NASA broke through the atmosphere, yet again, JFK was elected president, and it seemed like America was on top of the world. Hairdos were high, but the American spirit was higher. However, in the novel, it becomes evident that elements of segregation had bled into the fabulous pop culture of the seismic 60s. In Chapter 7, Kenny's older brother, Byron, partakes in a popular fashion trend common among African American males during this time, the conch. This fad involved chemically straightening hair with a gel-like substance made from potato starch, egg proteins, and corrosive lye. During this time, nearly every barber shop had at least one barber who specialized in conching hair. With protectively gloved hands, these stylists had to keep the paste-like substance off of the scalp when in use and quickly wash it out to prevent the harsh chemicals from severely burning the customer's hair follicles. If successful, the customer would waltz out of the barbershop with a suave, slick new do. Originally, young men saw cool musicians sporting this style, like Chuck Berry, James Brown, and Little Richard, and they were quick to copycat. However, many didn't know that imitating their favorite celebrities, just as we do today, would develop into an extremely controversial issue in the years to come. The following video clip further explains this.
Early in the 60s, you could catch an African American male sporting one of these. This is a conch. The conch was a hairstyle made popular among African American men. Coming into the 60s, the conch was popular because blacks were still in the mindset of whites being superior. So they would have their hair chemically straightened to resemble the hair of a white man. The style later fell out of popularity with the emergence of the Black Power movement and one of its trademarks.
African American men didn't realize that sporting a conch also subscribed them to the racist notion of Anglo-American superiority. In the novel, Byron decides to give this controversial trend a try. One brisk spring afternoon, a nervous Byron ducks into the doorway with a cap tightly sealed to the top of his head. Curious to know what her delinquent son is hiding under his hat, Miss Watson demands him to remove it. With great protest and hesitation, Byron lifts his lid and slowly yanks off his do-rag, revealing an explosion of spiky, slicked back, chemically processed hair. Once Miss Watson discovers what her son has done, she becomes enraged. The following video clip from Kenny Leon's film adaptation of the novel will show us how this situation resolves itself.
And what are you doing with a hat on in this house? Take it off.
Mama.
Right now.
What have you done?
Byron had gotten a conch, a process, a dew, a butter, a ton of trouble.
Byron, run to get out of here! Can't you see she's not
Joanna,
playing?
move away from him.
Mama, no! Mommy!
Hey! What is going on?
Oh, man. Hold your head still, boy. Take off one of those ears by mistake.
Kenneth, what are you doing?
Nothing, Mama.
What's your daddy doing?
Well, he's whistling. And cutting off Byron's hair.
Oh, come on away from there and leave them alone.
Yes, Mama.
The genie did it.
The genie did it. That's pretty amazing.
Cut it out. It's just a little aftershave. Mrs. Watson, I would like to introduce you to your long-lost son from Siam, His Royal Highness, Yule Watson. And Mrs. Watson, you can't possibly deny that this is your child, because as you can see, he has a lot of Sans blood in him. Look at these ears.
Don't try to blame it on my side of the family. Someone switched this child at the hospital.
Hey, I can't believe you, my son, will want to walk around looking like some pimp or hustler or white boy, none of which you are.
As we saw in the clip, this particular pop cultural element, the conch, negatively influenced the oldest Watson son to adopt an image that brought shame to his family. This authentication is a testament to pop culture's power over society, both then and now, positive and negative.
It isn't until the bombing of Birmingham's neighborhood church that we see the climax of the story and one of the most memorable historical moments in the civil rights movement. Based off the bombing of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church, the actual event occurred early on a September morning in 1963. On their arrival to the church, Kenny describes the area hit by disaster. Blown out windows, people covered in red and crowding in the streets, speculating who could have caused such a horrific event. According to the Atlanta Daily World, a known African-American newspaper, 2 white men snuck below the church the night before, leaving behind 15 sticks of dynamite said to explode during Sunday school. Setting off a sonic boom from around the town, the bomb was used as a warning to the advancement of the civil rights movement in the area. In the whirlwind of events, Kenny remembers seeing 3 little girls laid out in the front lawn covered in red. Another known African-American newspaper, the Atlanta Constitution, describes the horrific events, which killed 4 young girls and injured dozens more. Here's a short video describing the events in depth, with personal experiences to give you more of a feeling of what happened on that day. While the event is one of the most poignant moments in the civil rights movement, it also marks the resilience of the African-American community. Grateful for their daughter's life, the Watsons count their blessings and pack up their home in Birmingham to head back to Flint. The community, as described by the Atlanta Constitution, rallied around the church, making the children and the destroyed area a symbol for their movement.